Darkside are an American duo based in New York. They are Nicholas Jarre, no relation to Jean-Michel, I understand, as far as I know, who's an electronic musician, and Dave Harrington, who's a multi-instrumentalist. They had one stint of existence from 2011 to 2014, in which time they created one album, and they've had another stint of existence from 2018 to now, and they have released a second album during that period. Hi, my name is Dan. So this was their first album, and it's my first contact with them as well. So don't think I've heard them before. I can't remember hearing of them. And I would describe this as being electronic music with added instruments. So occasionally there's lyrics. The lyrics are quite hard to understand because they're kind of mumbled, and then they're heavily reverbed and processed. And I think it's done deliberately, so it's quite hard to pick out what's being sung about or said. It's often very repetitive and not of particular interest when I could actually work it out. The music, though, I really liked it. So it sounds quite like some late 80s, early 90s electronica in some ways. So it reminded me instantly of a guy called Michael Cretu, who was a Romanian German who did a whole lot of solo work. He worked with some bands as well. And then probably his most successful venture was with the band Enigma, who had some tracks that charted in the UK in the late 80s, early 90s. I'm also going to bring in as a reference Air here, who are the French band. So it's got a kind of slow pacing to it, similar to some Air stuff. It kind of majors on having chord sequences. It's very, it's different musically to some electronica that's often all on one chord or quite loose in the idea of harmony, whereas this has definitely got some more kind of music theory going on behind it. A lot of the sounds used are, there's a real variety of stuff, but the kind of predominant thing is some kind of breathy pads, and I would use the word breathy for the vocal reverb as well, that's very heavy. There's, as well as the musical stuff, there's beats as well, and there's quite slow-paced beats often. As well as those, there's some sounds and glitchy stuff. There's some sound effects that are being used that are kind of not quite sure what they are entirely. I think they've been processed. And there's some fairly modern-sounding use of samples and sample technology and things like that. And then we've got, as I said, added instruments on top, and then particularly guitar comes in. There's a really nice guitar on a track called Paper Trails, which I think is my favourite track on the album. So the album works really well as an album, I would say, as well. So the first track's quite a long track called Golden Trails, and it becomes quite expansive, and then it kind of settles down into a more kind of a rhythm of change that goes on for the rest of the album, that it works as a whole experience. I would say individual tracks are pretty good, but it works best as an album. And I would kind of describe it as this kind of semi-ambient experience, in that it's the sort of thing you might put on in the background whilst you're doing something else. So good working music. And it's got a really nice tone range to it. So it rewards being listened to through good systems. Probably my best reproduction is through headphones. I really liked it on the headphones. So, you got the impression I liked it? Yes, I did. This is a great album. It's a nice discovery. And I would definitely listen to this again. So, what do you think? Have you encountered this album for the first time through this review and through the links, or are you an old friend to it? I'd love to know your thoughts and your first impressions or your old impressions. So that's what the comments box is for, so please talk to me. That's it from me for now.
True.